Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we're going to talk about Jalen Williams' star ascendancy in the Western Conference. We're going to talk about Alperen Sengun's season now that he has this injury to his right leg. Then we're going to talk Wizards and Spurs. The first two teams eliminated from playoff contention. That means we're going to get into off-season previews. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about championship week and some conference tournaments. Until we start, though, here's the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown. Bang! Bang! What's this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Sam, I am moving cattle with my dad tomorrow morning. So here in about 12 to 15 hours, over under 0.5 times you have moved cattle.
Under? Couldn't be more under, Bryce.
What's the closest you've come to helping with livestock of any kind?
If we could get into the negatives in this conversation, I would be in the negatives of that.
So
not
zoo,
zero.
A zoo is the closest you've ever been to a cow or a pig or a horse or something like that.
I have attended a zoo previously. That is correct. Yeah. Not like, honestly, probably only like 5 or 6 times in my life have I been to a zoo. So again, I think we're closing in on like the negatives here. Having said that, my brother and his family are coming to visit us in like June, July, something like that. And we probably will go to a zoo. So that'll be the next time that I see like any sort of like real Australian livestock and cattle. When I drive the like side streets of rural Victoria to get places, I will see cows on the side of the road.
Okay.
Does that count?
No, but that's a start. I'm excited because during the winter, obviously I'm a teacher is my full-time job, but this is what my family does. This is my in-laws do as well. And so I can't wait for this spring and summer where I can just send you videos of us moving cattle and building fence and cutting wheat, harvesting and all of this stuff. I'm going to blow your mind with all of these things that I bring this stuff up. I do it with Amari too, because I just am fascinated by the different worlds that people grow up in and then, then we end up doing things like this together. So it just fascinates me.
It's kind of amazing. It is truly really, really funny to me that you herd cattle for a living. And that's amazing to me, even though you also teach and do this. So, okay, Bryce, we're going to talk about Jalen Williams to start here. Jalen Williams, I don't know if you got a chance to catch the game last night where Jalen Williams was unbelievable for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Look, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ended up with 30 points. But Jalen Williams, to me, is clearly making a jump into a different level of what he has been previously as a star in the NBA. And it's been happening for a little while now. Do you know who's leading the NBA in fourth quarter scoring since January 1st, Bryce?
I love that you brought this up because I looked up his fourth quarter points per game. I looked up his clutch stats. I know he's not number one for the whole year, but my guess is Jalen Williams.
It's Jalen Williams. He's averaging the most points per game in the fourth quarter since January 1st. He has been absolutely spectacular over the course of this entire season. And to me, the big thing that we talk about with Jalen Williams, and I feel like we've been talking about Jalen Williams on this podcast for multiple years now, going back to his last year, Santa Clara. I think I was higher on him than anybody in the public sphere pre-draft because I loved his game. I wasn't even high enough on him compared to where teams were after talking to them. Part of it is the mentality. When you talk to people that know Jalen Williams, he is competitive, man. Like, he has a competitive streak. He's like a great dude off the court. All of the like niceness that you see is very real and genuine. But when he gets on the court, he's trying to rip your heart out every time. And I love everything about the Jalen Williams experience across the board. The key to me, though, is that his game translates exceptionally well to playoff basketball. And that's kind of what I want to focus on today. We're going to watch some tape from the game last night against Dallas and just break down what makes Jalen Williams so special as a player. And to me, it starts with the 3-level scoring and the defensive ability. It's really hard to combine somebody all in one single player who is a phenomenal defensive player that also has the ability to score at all 3 levels of the court, not just like at a solid level, but at a above average to great level in some cases for Jalen.
And he has this like physical body that stands out along with the skill set. I know as I was like reading back through notes I had on J-Dub, it was like the secondary defender, the ball handling to navigate the secondary defender, and so it's like just those nuanced skills that he has to go along with the body and everything else. I want to ask you this, I didn't prepare this, but as you're talking, I think sometimes, the Thunder take him where they did. And at the time, maybe it looked like, oh, the Thunder were the team that like pinpointed him. Obviously, I wouldn't ask you to name teams, but thinking back to that, were there other teams you felt like were super high on? Yes. So it wasn't just the Thunder that kind of had him pegged in that area.
There were other teams that tried to move up to get him.
Got you.
Yes.
That's fascinating to me. Was it truly one team that pinpointed him, or were there others and the Thunder just happened to be the team that got there first or made the move that got, whatever. So
yeah, the Thunder obviously had the other pick right next to it that they took with Ousmane Dieng.
Yep.
And from what I know, I think that they might have taken Dieng first, but like they had Williams very high on their board. And also from what I know, there were multiple other teams that tried to move up, but because the Thunder kind of controlled that piece of the draft there after the Wizards took Johnny Davis, I think at 10, it was a little bit easier for them to dictate kind of how it was going to go on that night.
I was trying to remember which one of those was the pick so listen, I feel like this is the one where they took Dieng with the pick they did because in case something fell through with the trade. Like I remember hearing this and I can't source it, so I apologize, but it was like, okay, we have these back-to-back picks regardless, but the first one was actually one that they had made a trade for, and so they took Dieng with that pick just in case something with the trade, something funny happened, whatever. They wanted to make sure they took Jalen Williams with the one that they knew was going to stand pat 100%. There was 0% chance it didn't go through. So,
I mean, honestly, makes sense in some respect, if that would be the case. What I would say on Jalen Williams is, yes, they drilled evaluating Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with this pick, or with this trade for Paul George, right? And then, yes, they nailed the Chet Holmgren pick at number 2. I had Chet at number 1. I know many other high-ranking people in the NBA had Chet at number 1. I thought Chet was the obvious choice. I would have taken Chet. You really only had like one or two guys, though. You were either going to take Chet or you're going to take Jabari Smith, right? And it seemed like the choice was always Chet. So kind of an obvious pick there. To me, taking Jalen Williams at number 12 is what has completely transformed them as an organization, hitting who I believe a guy that is going to be a many-time All-Star, like not just like a few times. I think Jalen Williams is going to make like many All-Star games. We're going to talk about Alperen Sengun momentarily here, and I know Sengun's numbers are amazing, and I love Alperen Sengun as a player offensively, particularly. I would take Jalen Williams over Sengun at this point, like pretty comfortably, just given how well his game looks like it's going to translate to playoff basketball and the skill level involved of combining all of his skill sets into one single player.
Well, and I think what it does is we talk about the Mavericks in past episodes. You have Luka and Kyrie, and I'm not putting SGA and Chet or SGA and J-Dub, whatever, but we talk about them needing the third guy, right? Like what's crazy is the Thunder already have the 3 guys. Now, this is all dependent on health and all of that. And also it just fits together. The 3 of them fit together really well. But I do think J-Dub is the one that makes it work. And I've said this already about him because we do talk about him a lot, is what is special. He's willing to play off of SGA when they're on the court together. And then he is willing or able to take the lead role when SGA is off the floor. So whenever you're second best player, third best player, however people want to, categorize it, is able to dominate the game and dominate the ball when he needs to, but also play off the ball and play off of your star. That's a truly special, again, second or third player, wherever you want to consider it. And so that's where just like getting all three of those guys puts this team on a crazy trajectory.
Yeah. So let's just dive into the tape here, I think, and just kind of talk through what makes him such a special basketball player, right? So this is a fun little opening set here, with 7:46 left in the first quarter from the game last night against Dallas, where they set essentially like a one. I don't even know what do we call Josh in terms of his position is anymore.
Yeah.
Like, is he a point guard? Is he like the 4-man for Oklahoma City now? Like Jalen tends to guard the bigger guys a lot of the time. It's very confusing, but they're setting basically like a Shea Giddey ball screen here where Shea is going to drive into Daniel Gafford. My guess is that they are doing this because Giddey is being guarded by Daniel Gafford here. So Shea is going to get into the lane here. He's going to use his body really, really well on Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones cuts him off at a really high level. And what I want you to see here, particularly, just the level of explosion that Jalen Williams has with his first step, right? Like, he does a great job with just this little swing through with his arms, and then just gets the ball so low to the ground here because his arms are so long. That 7'2" wingspan absolutely is an enormous factor with making Jalen Williams as impactful as he is. Just look at how close to the ground the ball is here. You can't see it because PJ is there, but you can kind of see it just like right there, even before he totally begins the swing through, right? Like, that's just so close to the ground here. Plays with great bend as well to get the most out of his athleticism. And then point here as well, this is the first time we're going to see Jalen Williams' strength. Just look at this little elbow he's going to give here to Josh Green in order to create just that little bit of extra separation, just that sneaky little elbow. He's got a referee back here that can't see it. He's got a referee on the side here that can't see it. It's just really sharp. It's really smart to be able to use that elbow to get that little bit of extra juice to get to the rim. He knows as well, I think, that he has that's Kyrie down on the baseline here as well. So that's going to be a little bit easier for him to finish at the basket. Yeah, this is just fantastic work from Jalen Williams.
Well, the thing is, whenever he gets his shoulders past the defender and gets the defender's hips open like he does, right, it's over right from the start. Like, he's so explosive off his first step, the defender completely opens up, and J-Dub is going to take advantage of that every time. He's too strong, he's too explosive not to. I also want to point out, everybody watching live right now or on YouTube kind of knows this. So if you're listening, this isn't like some crazy hard closeout. The defender actually gets locked in on the closeout. So there's one thing to beat a defender because the closeout is out of control or, just a crazy contest. The defender is actually able to set his feet and lock in. And then he just subtly uses like that kind of swing through, sets him up. Like right here, the defender is in a stance, squared up, ready to defend, and he has his hips turned on the first step. Like, that's just how explosive he is with that move.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, this is fine. Like, this is okay. His feet are set here. What he does, I think, Josh, is I think Jalen like noticed just these like small, like little imperceptible things, right? Where he notices Josh just get onto his heels that much right there, I think, and that's where it's gone. As soon as that heel rises, I think he knows that he's got him at that point, and he's just going to be able to go straight line, get all the way to the rim, and score. Just a fantastic finisher. Has been an elite finisher since he has gotten to the NBA. the numbers just like indicate he is absolutely one of the best wing finishers in the league. He was one of, I think he shot like 65% at the rim last season. This year, he's at 61% at the rim so far. A lot of those being self-created opportunities. Just a fantastic player as a whole at the basket. Next one here.
Real quick, Sam, I know we're talking Jalen Williams, but also notice who's at the top of the key on that drive is Chet Holmgren. And this is why Chet is really special to this team offensively, is PJ Washington's not standing on the nail at the start of J-Dub's drive to cut it off like you would against a lot of 5-man centers. He is out guarding Chet because Chet has the gravity that he does. PJ is essentially at like the high school top of the key, like the high school 3-point line. And that makes it hard for them to get over and recover, as opposed to right down on the nail at the free throw line, forcing the kick out. And that just speaks to Chet's gravity as a floor spacer.
It's really valuable. It's a really, really valuable point there with Chet. Next up here, Chet Holmgren's going to get this rebound. And then we've just got Jalen Williams out in space. Look at the power, right? Derrick Jones Jr. is not like a small dude, right? I want you guys to like see the speed here. Look at how quickly he covers ground.
Yeah.
As he's going. He just completely cuts off this angle from PJ Washington. Look, he just goes here and he's just going to zoom here, right? He's going to completely cut off that angle. So PJ is in jail and can't do anything with him. Then next, look at that bump. Look at where he bumps him, which is right here, right at the elbow. He's going to bump him here. And look at how far back Derrick Jones is going to end.
Ends up at the circle, yeah.
Yeah. That is ridiculous strength for an NBA player. He just bumped Derrick Jones from here all the way to here. That is absurd. Like that is not something that NBA players do, especially NBA wings. That's like Kawhi, Jimmy Butler. Like, honestly, that is the strength that we're talking about here. Moving guys from here to here on a bump is absurd.
Well, and Derrick Jones does is like everything he can, right? Like he takes a step there to cut him off. This is in transition, which makes it even harder. He takes the contact in the chest. I like the no foul call either way. Like, don't call a defensive foul here. Don't call an offensive foul either, of course. Make the guy make the shot, right? Like, show your skill level here. If you want to give him that contact, that's fine. Now be able to decelerate, collect your balance, collect your body control, and finesse this off the backboard. And if he can do that, then let's go to the other end. So I love that there was no foul call either.
Yeah, and just Jalen's balance as well. Just look at how he maintains that.
Oh, he doesn't even use the glass.
Contact.
He just teardrops it.
Yeah, just teardrops it. Look at how straight up and down he is after that bump, right?
Yep.
Like, that's what's absurd. It's the contact balance mixed with the force. It's crazy, crazy, crazy how strong and physical this guy is, while also being able to maintain the touch through the bumps. So
that's what I'm talking about. Like
here,
the skill level, man. The skill level, I think, is underappreciated with this guy quite a bit because he does look so physically imposing.
Yeah, this next one here sets like a little pick and pop from Chet Holmgren. Shea gets cut off, and now we're just canning a three, right? So already through 3 clips, and by the way, this is in 90 seconds. These 3 clips that we've watched so far have been like right around the 8-minute mark down to the 6:35 mark here. We've seen it from all 3 levels already, right? Yep. So what makes Shea so valuable, obviously, is just the way that he forces help every single time. Again, I mean, Dallas's defense is interesting in the way that they tend to guard things. But in this case, you can see that they have Gafford on Giddey because they want to try and sag off of Giddey. They have Josh Green basically in a 1-on-2 on the strong side of the action with Giddey and Jalen Williams. Jalen's not like a completely comfortable and confident I think he's confident, but like he doesn't always try and take threes at a super high volume. So I get trying to go 1-on-2 here. Shea finds the angle out to Giddey. I kind of think what you'd love to see here is that if like PJ Washington, who just is kind of like standing here in no man's land at a certain point,
He should be rotating back out to Chet, I feel like.
yeah, you would like to see him kind of fly back out to Chet here. So go there all the way out to here. I think that now you're stuck with essentially, once you make this pass, Derek Jones now is the one who's stuck in a 1-on-2 situation here. So 1 versus 1, 2, because Josh Green has to commit out to his Australian brethren, Josh Giddey. And that's just a hard spot to be in, right? PJ Washington, like, look, like this isn't PJ. I don't know this is PJ's fault necessarily. It's just hard to guard, right? But you would really like to see him get out a little bit quicker there, I think, so that Derek can actually make the heavy closeout that's necessary onto Jalen Williams. But Jalen Williams cans this 3 easy. I think the Basketball Genesis makes a fair point.
Yep.
You know,
absolutely.
you probably just want to leave Josh Giddey open there. And if
Yeah.
you're Josh Green, you want to shoot out to Jalen Williams. That's just like not, I get it that like that's like, you know, super high end scouting stuff, but like it's not the natural rotation, right? Like if you're in the moment like that, the natural rotation is fuck, this guy just got the ball. It's going to be an open corner 3. I have to get out to him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I watch it all the time. Like I watch people do it to Asar Thompson. Asar Thompson is shooting far worse than Josh Giddey, and I watch people close out to Asar Thompson in the corner. So I think there's just at times natural instincts take over, especially in scramble situations. Not when you're like locked in, but in a scramble situation, the natural instinct is because your whole career, a pass has been made, you follow the pass to the next guy. You know, you anticipate those things. So I think what you would have liked to see is Josh turn, take one step, then notice that it's Giddey, and then like stunt and then back off of it. But at the end of the day, Jalen Williams is shooting 45% from 3 this year, Sam, on 3.5 attempts. So he's upped his attempts and he's gotten his percentage up by almost 10. Like, again, your 3-level scoring point is proven with every clip, every stat, everything we talk about.
100%. So next one here. I love this clip because I always hate these camera angles for the most part, but in this case, it was actually pretty good. So Williams brings the ball up the court, throws it to Giddey at the top of the key, goes to set a screen. And then they kind of like do a, I mean, what do you want to call that? Almost like a wrap kind of deal. Yeah, where Williams sets this screen, then Kaysen comes around and sets the screen onto Williams's man for Williams to come up and get that little bit of separation. And the end result here in doing that is you get this switch, right? You get this switch where you get Jaden Hardy onto Jalen Williams. And, you know, Jaden Hardy's just smaller than Jalen Williams, right? So now we get another screen from Giddey coming up. It's almost like a zoomy kind of wrap pin action kind of deal.
It's a little zoomish. Yeah.
Yeah. So once he gets that separation, and as you say, once he gets his shoulders past Jaden Hardy, you can only see Jaden Hardy's shoulders here because he's past Hardy. And then you get the deceleration to stop in the middle of the paint because he sees Gafford there lurking because Gafford is completely helped off of Giddey. You got Gafford here all the way in the paint. You've got Giddey here at the 3-point line. And now it's just stop and pop, little mini fade, nothing but net. Like this in-between game, this is the stuff that translates to the NBA playoffs. This stuff is going to be lethal in the playoffs, and it's how you counter break things like teams sagging off of Giddey. Like if you want to play Giddey in the playoffs, having this killer mid-range guy who's going to sag off and like try and shut down the paint, having somebody that can consistently make that shot is critical, is absolutely critical.
And again,
next up here,
I was just real quick. I know we're not talking about Josh Giddey, but if Josh Giddey would be a good screen setter, he would be really tough in those type of actions. Like here, he gets a little bit of Hardy, but if he got a solid screen on Hardy with where Gafford's playing, it makes it that much easier for Williams, for SGA, whoever he's setting those screens for. So I realize we're trying to keep the focus on Williams here, but I can't help but see that from Giddey and go, man, this is the way you stay on the floor, Josh, is by setting good screens. And if your defender's going to play off of you like that, you're going to get so many screen assists throughout a game if you'll set good ones.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Next one here. Giddey swings the ball over across. And now we've just got like a wild rotation here.
That's a great relocation, though, from him.
That's
J-Dub.
what I wanted to bring up. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I wanted to bring up.
It's great.
So Jalen Williams here at the start of this play is at the top of the key. Or, what do you want to call it? Wing top of the key.
Yeah.
Adjacent. Like almost like bordering on like getting into the slot, right?
Yep.
And we're going to get this drive. He is trying to cut, it feels like, in order to like get this little like slot, like 45 cut, get past his man who is Kyrie here, hopefully be able to catch and force Tim Hardaway Jr. potentially into this weird 1-on-2 situation. He's kind of already got it, right? But it's an easier pass for him to make than who is that with the ball? Is that Aaron?
Well, I thought I think it's SGA. No, is it not?
No, it's not Shea. I think it's Aaron Wiggins. Maybe
Aaron Wiggins.
Yeah. So Williams kind of gets into the paint here with this little slot cut, and the ball just like kind of squirts out, right? And you'd hope that Kyrie is going to get this ball most of the time if you're a Dallas fan, I would imagine, right? He ends up just diving for it and missing it, right? That happens. So now what I love about Case and Wallace is just the ability to take up space, force the help, and then Jalen is just relocating, right? Jalen's just finding the open area of the defense. This is a guy that, could be an all-star as soon as next year, and he is just completely wide open here. How often do you get guys that are that good who end up this open from three, cans it, nothing but net, looks at the fans? That's the thing too I love about Jalen Williams, just absolutely talks to the fans, gives energy, gives effort all the time. He's just a fantastic, fantastic player. This one, Jalen Williams, other Jalen Williams from Arkansas, misses a three. We're in kind of a weird scramble situation now. We've got Maxi Kleba out on Jalen Williams here, our Jalen Williams that we're talking about. Cans it like it's nothing. Super easy. Just drills another open three. Relocates, finds the open spot, nails it. Now we're into the fourth quarter, and this is where I think things got like truly special for Jalen Williams in this game. This one here, they've got Josh Green on him, and then they've got PJ Washington guarding Chet Holmgren. Chet doesn't set a fantastic screen here. No, it's Dante Exum guarding Jalen Williams. Yeah. Dante Exum is guarding Jalen Williams here. And you're just going to see him string together like 5 moves here in order to get past Dante Exum and just drill this mid-range pull-up, right? So not a great screen from Chet. You've got this little hang dribble into a between the legs, into a crossover, back between the legs, back to a crossover, 2-pound dribbles, cash from the mid-range. What are we doing? This guy's 6'6" with like a 7'2" wingspan and like an 8'9" standing reach. He shoots with a super high release point. This is not normal. This stuff is not normal, Bryce.
Well, what I love is the stop, the 1-2 into the jumper. Also, Exum is giving him some space, and he still gets him out. Like right there, you see the advantage he is able to create. And then like you can just see how he's able to lower his center of gravity. And then right there, he's just able to 1-2. And then he has to turn his body in the air into the jump. Like right now, his feet are pointed almost directly towards the baseline, and he's on the right lane line. And as he jumps, he's able to get himself squared over a pretty tough contest. Like, this is an awful defense by Dante Exum. You know, like this is, you're forcing a tough mid-range contested jump shot, and he makes it look easy because he's really good.
I'm so glad you brought up the point about getting low. I brought it up once earlier, and I think it's a crucial point to what makes him as successful as he is. Look at how low he gets to the ground here on that deceleration stop. Jump stop here almost looks like his momentum is like going this way.
I say
right?
he's
Like,
almost squatting back more than I would. Obviously, this is going to sound stupid. Like, I almost wouldn't want him doing this, but obviously it works, right? Like, it looks like he's literally setting the chair, Sam. Like, it looks like somebody pulled a chair out from under him, and he's still able to be explosive out of it. That's crazy. Such lower body strength.
Yeah. And then just rises up. Look at the release point. Like, look at how high this is. That release point is above the rim, right? Like, his release point is here. The rim is like here right now. And he's still able to do it with such incredible touch. He gets great elevation on the jumper there. It's ridiculous.
Can you go back to where you had it paused just a second ago, or as close as possible? Because I want to show the concentration he has as well. So we go back just a little forward, just a bit, just right where he's about to release it. If you can, that's fine. Even here, look at Exum into his lower body. Like, Exum is doing exactly what you'd want from a defender in terms of he's getting into his lower body on this shot, making him feel him. And he does it without fouling. I think this is good defense by Exum, but you can see Jalen's eyes are on the rim. Like, this is just great concentration with the defender that's right in a spot that would make you a little bit uncomfortable. And again, he made it look easy. Like, that's an extremely tough shot in a big moment.
It's unbelievable. I think this one was 2 possessions later. Again, we've got this, I don't even know what you want to call this, like a little, like, I don't know, is that like almost like a step up and pop, like, kind of deal with Chet? Do you want to call it like a sealed step up almost?
Like, not a whole lot of actual screens going on here, but
yeah. And again, Exum does like fine here, and then Jalen just like bodies him.
Goodness.
He does absolutely everything he can do well here, and it's just like, well, I'm just gonna move you. Sorry, nothing you can do.
His hips aren't even all the way open. Exum is in great position. Like, Jalen rocks him a little bit, but he gets back. He's turned a little bit. So J-Dub created an advantage. So yeah, he's a little more turned than I was saying. He does have his hips turned here. Gosh dang, that is tough though. Yeah, he got his hips turned. Whew.
So like, Dante's feet basically were like here and here. His feet after that bump are here. That's like 10 feet of separation that he's just creating from Exum, and he just stops and pops off of this. This is not easy. This is not easy at all, guys. The fact that he is able to do this is just like completely ridiculous and totally absurd to me. Next one here. Again, fourth quarter. I think this is literally the next possession after the shot we just watched. Double drag from Chet and Aaron Wiggins, and we're just going to get all the way to the rim here. I love how he splits the double drag here. So we've got Wiggins coming up, getting guarded by Jaden Hardy. We've got PJ Washington guarding Chet Holmgren. I think that they kind of guard this in an interesting way. They switch it on the first action, and then where Exum is going to go with Wiggins, and they're going to ask Hardy to handle Jalen Williams. And then it looks like they're going to kind of drop it on the second one to me.
Yep.
Maybe play a little bit of a higher drop.
It looked like they used him. He was going to play at the level there, but yeah.
Yeah. Almost like at the level, like a catch drop kind of situation. And Jalen just decides, nope, I'm just going to deny that. I've got Jaden way too high up here.
Yep.
I'm going to adjust. I've got Jaden's foot is outside of Chet's foot already. So he's going to be able to probably stay in decent guarding position on me. So I'm just going to put the ball between my legs and I'm going to go this way. It's the flexibility mixed with the strength, mixed with the length, mixed with the touch, the physicality, all of it, right? And then what you've got here is, because Hardy is like dead at this point, you're basically making Exum like kind of be the drop defender here almost.
Yeah.
And then like he needs Gafford to like rotate over. Like this is such a weird, awkward guarding position for Dante Exum, but that's the kind of positions that Jalen Williams puts you in, right? Like I think that what Exum would be hoping for here is that he can just like kind of stay attached to Hardy for a second, hope that Gafford is available if Williams throws this lob to Wiggins here. And then Hardy can kind of recover back as we go, right? But Exum just kind of gives up on it, I guess. So maybe he doesn't hope that. Exum just kind of like stops.
Well, I'm sure it caught him off guard. Like usually a double drag, you come off both screens and you're playing up. Like Exum is anticipating Jalen Williams to play to the other side of the floor. He switches out onto Wiggins, and as soon as he turns around, here comes J-Dub downhill at him. So he's not expecting him to come back and attack him. Doesn't mean he shouldn't step over that, but
yeah, I wonder if Jalen kind of like manipulates him here with his eyes, because Dante like stunts to him with one step, it looks like. And then it feels like he expects Wiggins to like filter out to the corner to me and get out that way, which means he has to kind of follow him. It's a weird play by Exum, but it's like more impressive to me on the side of Williams, right? And then he just like finishes through contact on Daniel Gafford. Like it's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I wonder if you're right. I wish we had a baseline view to see if J-Dub's eyes moved Exum or held him for a second, like he was making that pass to the corner. Because you're right, like just Exum's movements are a little bit unique.
Yeah, but the big boys, Gafford right at the basket. No issues there. Length extension at the basket has always been incredibly impressive from Jalen Williams, obviously. Next one here, we're going to get an Isaiah Joe screen. Again, Jalen Williams rejects the screen. Always has been awesome rejecting screens in that way. Now we're in a spot where he forces the switch onto Kyrie from PJ Washington. The other thing I want you guys to see here is look how many guys that Dallas has thrown at Jalen Williams to try and stop him at this point. We've got PJ Washington. We've got Dante Exum. I think we had Maxi Kleba for a possession. We had primarily like Josh Green to start the game. They're just throwing shit at the wall here, trying to stop him in some way, shape, or form. He forces the switch onto Kyrie. Kyrie tries to come out, makes him feel him, and it's, he's just too small. Like that's the thing here. Kyrie does a great job here, I think. Not just a good job, like he does literally every single thing he can here. Gets him, stays attached to him, locks onto his hip, contests, and he's just too small. The release point is all the way up here. That's as far as Kyrie is contesting. Just can't really do anything with that. Like small guards can't do anything with him.
I want to give Isaiah Joe a shout out as well. Isaiah Joe catches this and knows exactly what J-Dub is doing. So J-Dub, you'll watch this in an NBA game. A lot of times like here, a player will get the switch, they'll give it up, and then they'll immediately back out so they can kind of create a little bit of space to then make their move downhill. Isaiah Joe doesn't catch it and reverse it to SGA. He doesn't catch and look at the basket. He catches and he immediately goes back to J-Dub to let J-Dub. And why that matters, Sam, there's already 10 seconds on the shot clock. If Isaiah Joe plays around with that for 2 or 3 seconds, then that limits J-Dub's options. Like, he still scores with 5 or 6 seconds on the shot clock, but it does matter. And so it's just those little nuance things that, yes, Isaiah Joe is a great floor spacer, but all of these Thunder players are so high feel, so good, like basketball awareness of what's going on. And he just fits that perfectly.
Yeah, no, totally. His processing ability has always been really, really high level for a spacer. I think he's really, really smart about the way he attacks things. Again, the realignment in midair is the other thing I want to point out here. So he stops here. Look at how he twists his body in midair in order just to get his hips and to get his elbow in alignment with the rim. All fantastic work here. Finally, next one up. This is with 2:30 left. I think this is the second to last clip we've got. Again, we're setting like this little seal, like step up ghost kind of action, I guess we'll call it. They've got PJ Washington on Jalen Williams. They have Tim Hardaway Jr. on Chet Holmgren.
Interesting.
And then PJ just fouls him, right? Like, again, as you mentioned, the shoulders. Gets the shoulders past him.
Yep.
His shoulders are here. PJs are twisted that way. No chance at that point. PJ's got to foul him.
Also, just notice the score in all of these. This isn't like a 15-point separation. Those early clips of the fourth quarter were 3. I think the clip before this, maybe the Thunder looked like, I think if I remember right, had extended it to like 7 or 8, something like that. Even right here is a 6-point game with 2.5 minutes left to go. Also, like, shout out SGA, right? SGA is a real legitimate MVP candidate, and he's letting Jalen Williams cook in this game. Like, again, not like their egos are real. And that's what's kind of special about these guys playing together, playing off of each other. He sees that J-Dub has it going. He has the right matchups, and he's let him do his thing.
Yep, that's dead on. Finally here, this is I believe the final bucket that Oklahoma City makes in this game. Jalen's going to miss a 3. Casey Wallace, just an unbelievable rebound. And then
Great
the moment that he sees Derek Jones Jr. turn, right?
Yep.
So this is it, right? So he misses. Jones, like you can kind of see here, he's going to peek back, right? Right there. Peeks back at him, right?
Yep.
To kind of see where he's at. Jalen is going to see him turn again here, and that's when he starts his cut, right? As soon as he starts turning his vision that way, his momentum is like kind of funky. Jalen's just going to go, right? He's just like, okay, I'm going to finish this at the rim. Kaysen, hit me. This is a fantastic pass by Casey Wallace.
Yeah.
Just the ability to execute this pass is unbelievable. Gets him way above the rim.
Yep.
I mean, just fantastic. This is just this is an elite player in the NBA. I don't know if he's like a top 30 player, top 25. I don't know what to call him at this point. I know to call him an elite player. That's where I'm at on all of this. He is genuinely Oklahoma City's second best player right now. And oh, by the way, I've got defensive clips because he did some things defensively last night that were completely ridiculous in transition. So let's start with this one. Shea is just going to kind of lose the ball to Derek Jones here. Jalen is trailing. And he just catches him. Like, look at how long he is.
Yep.
Look at how long he is. Catches him, looks back, screams at the crowd, gets them into it. Look at his arms.
Well, and the hand length, the hand play. Because here's the thing: Derek Jones Jr. not an unathletic player, right? Like has some vertical pop.
No,
right?
Has a lot of vertical pop.
Has some vertical pop. And Derek Jones Jr. moves this ball. Now, like I don't agree with the decision of what he does with it, where he brings it back. But at the end of the day, he's still like it wasn't a stationary just right above his head. Like he brings it up, he brings it back. Like Jalen not only jumps, reaches, but he tracks the ball, and his hand placement is perfect to get this block.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Whips around, goes nuts with the fans. This next one here. This is another like little turnover. Kyrie catches him. I have no idea. I truly have no idea how he gets this. This is so ridiculous. You're gonna see afterward, Kyrie just kind of turns and laughs. Like, wait, like what just happened? Like Kyrie goes up with one hand, uses his left leg even to like the left knee to like kind of try and shield Jalen a little bit, and he catches it all the way above the basket. He catches that like almost 2/3 of the way up the square, right? This was an obscene Jalen Williams game. Quick.
You love the effort.
Look at Kyrie's face. Look at his face.
Well, and here's the thing. What I love about J-Dub there, not like he's not celebrating it because he knows he just turned the ball over. So he turns around and starts tapping his chest, looking at teammates or whoever going like, that was my bad, because he had just turned the ball. Like, watch right here. Starts tapping his chest. So this one, he's not like hooting and hollering and playing to the crowd because he knows like, hey, I just messed up. Now he made up for it. So, all is forgiven. But that's kind of like the competitiveness that you love, like the personality that you love, that, he'll get into the crowd who'll do these things, but then he'll also take accountability when he makes a mistake. Both of these save buckets off turnovers, right? So you talk about some of the most iconic defensive plays we remember in the NBA. Usually it's off a turnover in transition. I'm not saying these match up with those. I'm just saying those are the type of things we're seeing right now. Just great hustle, point-saving plays throughout a game.
That's exactly right. It's just so dead on in terms of what Jalen Williams brings to the table. I have been immensely impressed with him throughout the course of his career to this point. I've said this name many times when we've brought up the Jalen Williams conversation. He is Jimmy Butler to me. Like, he is the next generation's Jimmy Butler. Every time I watch him, he looks like he has a real chance to be an all defense guy, similar to Jimmy. He is an unbelievable 3-level scorer. He's a better shooter than Jimmy was, frankly, at any point of his career. Maybe not from mid-range. Jimmy is a pretty real assassin there, but the way he uses his strength, the way he uses the physicality. He talked a little bit after the game about like how he this summer took it really seriously because he felt like strength and the ability to move guys was his potential advantage. So he really focused in on just like being in the gym, lifting, being stronger this year. When games get tighter, he said, like, that's when strength really matters. That physicality really matters. I think he is an absolute superstar moving forward. If you wanted to call him a top 30 player in the league, I think he is a top 30 player in the league right now. Just kind of straight up. And
I think these playoffs will give us, if he's not, I think this playoffs will solidify it. Like, anybody who doesn't know Jalen Williams right now, and when we see this, because like you said, I think we both believe his game translates even better to the playoffs. My guy, Nick Crane, actually texted me while we were recording here. He said also, like, he's really good finishing with both hands. So like, we showed a couple really tough finishes through contact, all of that stuff, but he can also finish with his left. And so that's something that stands out as well. Like, if you're going to be a true 3-level scorer, in that mid-range level, like, can you float? Can you stop and, shoot a true jump shot at the rim? Can you finish with athleticism? Can you finish with finesse? Can you finish with finesse with both hands? So shout out Nick for that. He wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well. Yep. I think it's a really great point, and I think he's just an absolute like star moving forward. Honestly, like, I don't know which one I would take of him and Paulo moving forward. Like, if you made me redraft that draft, I probably would take Chet long-term at number 1. I think the marginal advantages that he brings to the table are just so drastic for you in terms of the elite defense, the elite shooting, in terms of like being scalable to like winning situations. I think that having that guy at center is super, super valuable. Honestly, like, I think there is a real case to take Jalen over Paulo. He's just been better than Paulo has been defensively to this point in his career, and he's been more efficient. I think there's totally a case that Paulo is tasked with being the number 1 guy on the Orlando Magic at this point and gets all of the defensive attention, whereas Jalen Williams plays next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and has like the most immaculately spaced court, whereas Paulo has the worst spaced court in the NBA, probably. I think Paulo is a more
is probably a better offensive play. I don't even know about better. He's just like so physically capable of taking advantage of mismatches in such a substantial way. He does need to improve, I think, as a shooter. I think Jalen probably hasn't beat there as a shooter right now. Paulo's a little bit younger than Jalen Williams is as well. It's a real conversation to me, at least. I get it that Paulo just made the All-Star team in the East, but guys, Jalen Williams, if he was in the Eastern Conference, would have made the All-Star team. Like, I don't know what to tell you about. Like, that's easy to me. Jalen is special. Putting him in conversation with Paulo is not a crazy discussion to me.
Well, it's an interesting one as well, because I think J-Dub plays as the second option better than Paulo would play as the second option because of the floor spacing and the defense and some of those things. And that's no knock on Paulo. I think then the conversation becomes could J-Dub go be the number one option in Orlando? You know, like if he was in Orlando being asked to be the number one option, would he be doing what Paulo's doing? And we've seen, again, like I've highlighted, whenever SGA is not on the floor, it seems like J-Dub is able to take that, but that's different. Like that's a different scenario whenever you have to be that guy every game, all 30 plus minutes, totally. Not just in a few minute stretches here and there. So I think it's an interesting conversation. At the end of the day, like J-Dub being in Oklahoma City is a great spot for him. Like, I don't think Paulo would make as much sense as J-Dub in OKC, just because of what J-Dub does playing off these guys.
But you know what? Like, this is part of what makes the conversation interesting to me.
Sure.
Is because J-Dub would be great in Orlando, right? Yeah. Like you can easily make the case that J-Dub like makes a ton more sense in Orlando than Paulo does in Oklahoma City. It's just scalability, right? Like I think the world of Jalen's scalability. The fact that this guy is not invited to Team USA camp is the craziest thing on planet Earth to me. Like, we have guys like, all due respect to these players, and I truly don't mean any disrespect, because people know that like I love Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso, I thought, played like the best game of his career earlier this week. Yeah. He had like 23 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. He was unbelievable in this game. And taking him over Jalen Williams is crazy to me. Taking Josh Hart over Jalen Williams is like completely bonkers to me.
Well, it's because he's shooting the ball so well, right? So it's like his game translates to any type of game and really any type of role, because he defends and he can space the floor. So yeah, with Team USA, he's not going to be the guy. Like, you're not going to ask him to be the guy, but I think he shoots over 50. Yeah, he shoots over 50% from corner threes, and it's not a high volume of his attempts, but let him go stand in the corner and make corner threes and cut off the ball and offensive rebound and then defend. Like that, again, this is why the argument has merits, is because he's so good at those things. And you're right. Like, it seems like a guy that would make a lot of sense on an Olympic team, on a all-star team like that. So
he would make a crazy amount of sense, in my opinion. Just a crazy amount of sense. Do you know what helps me make sense though, Bryce? Magic Mind. Magic Mind has changed the game entirely for me. You see, life was a constant battle. I have to balance writing. I have to balance podcasting. I have to balance finding time for my wife and my animals and everything. I'm pretty drained regularly. Look at my face right now. Like I look tired. Let's just be real about it. My mornings are sluggish. My afternoons could be a bit of a daze. And by the time the evening rolled around, like I was just dead tired. But Magic Mind, here it is, folks. Magic Mind is my secret weapon. I've been incorporating it into my daily routine for about a month now. And let me tell you, the results are beyond anything I could have imagined. No more sluggish mornings, no more midday crashes. I am firing on all cylinders from dawn till dusk. I've got more energy than ever, a clear head to tackle any challenge that comes my way, and productivity, it's through the roof. I'm smashing goals left and right. It feels incredible, but it's not just about productivity. Magic Mind has brought balance back into my life. I'm sleeping better, feeling less stress, and I'm a little bit more creative. The best part is it's all thanks to natural ingredients, nootropics, adaptogens working together to support my mind and body, reducing anxiety and inflammation along the way. So if you're ready to unlock your full potential, embrace each day with vitality and purpose, then you owe it to yourself to give Magic Mind a try. Head over to magicmind.com/gametheory20. That's GAMETHEORY 20, and use code GameTheory20 for up to 56% off your first subscription or 20% off of a one-time purchase. Again, that's magicmind.com/gametheory20. Trust me, you won't regret it. Here's to a brighter, more energized you. The second sponsor today is Champs Paperhead. Can you feel it, sports fans? Championship week is here, and the thrill of tournament time is coursing through our veins. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on with some of what we've seen from championship week. It's that electrifying moment where we gather around with friends, we clutch those brackets tight, and we brace ourselves for the exhilarating ride ahead. But hold on to your hats, because this year the excitement levels are off the charts. Thanks to our incredible partner, Champs Pay Per Head. We're taking the madness to a whole new level with an opportunity that's as thrilling as a buzzer beater, a chance to score big with our bracket tournament over here at Game Theory. Listen up, folks. Entry is absolutely free, courtesy of the folks over at Champs Pay Per Head. You use that exclusive code Game Theory, GAME space THEORY. And here's the cherry on top. You can double your chances of victory by creating your very own tournament. Now let's talk about why Champs Pay Per Head is the MVP of bracket season. With their innovative platform, you're the captain of the ship. You want to kick things off at the Sweet 16? Go for it. Craving some extra spice with incentives for picking up underdogs? They've got you covered. But there's more with Champs Pay Per Head, because you can channel your inner bookie. You craft custom bets to keep the adrenaline pumping with your crew. It's like having your own sports book right at your fingertips. Where can you find this game-changing platform? Head over to champsportspools.com/game theory. That's champs, CHAMPS, sportspools.com/game theory, and dive into the action this March. Be the hero among your squad and orchestrate the ultimate bracket showdown with Champs Pay Per Head. Trust me, this is an opportunity you absolutely do not want to miss. It is a slam dunk. And remember, you can't win championships by sitting on the sidelines here. Join the fray, create your winning bracket at champsportspools.com/game theory for a shot at our jaw-dropping $1,000 prize pool. Don't let this chance slip through your fingers, guys. All right, Bryce, let's do it. Let's talk about Alperen Sengun now. Alperen Sengun, unfortunately, earlier this week, suffered an injury to his lower right leg that I was like really worried when I saw it. Looked incredibly serious. The good news is that it's a severely sprained ankle and a bruised knee. He was like wheeled off the court. It looked like it was going to be like considerably bad. The good news looks like, probably like he probably misses the rest of the year, but it doesn't look like it's going to extend into next year at all. This looked like something that could be like really bad for the Rockets moving forward, and really bad for Alperen Sengun heading into an extension eligible period for him, because he's in his third season. He had an incredible third season that we'll talk about here. What were your thoughts when you saw Sengun go down, and what were your thoughts whenever you saw this and kind of saw the news that it looks like it's not overly serious, but let's be real about it. Like, it seems like his season is, probably over. Maybe if they get really into this play-in picture, like he could come back later. I think they're like 2.5 games out of 10th right now, something like that, maybe 3.5 games out of 10th. So they need to make up some real ground without him, and that's obviously going to be hard.
Yeah, my initial thought was like, I didn't care about this season. If they make a run for the 10th seed, great, whatever. But he's been so good this year. He's continued to improve year over year. I'll be honest, I was a little bit late to the Alperen Sengun bandwagon, and, that's on me, but now I'm fully on board. I love a lot of his game that I'm sure we're going to dive into. And so it was like, what does this mean long-term? Right. And I know, like, sometimes with, if it's a major knee injury or something like that, or lower leg injury that requires surgery, some people will say, well, his game's not predicated on athleticism. It's okay. But sometimes whenever a guy's already not like crazy athletic, something like that could really, it could be an issue. Like, it could be a long-term issue. So the fact it was only quote unquote an ankle and a bone bruise that he should be fully recovered from 100%, no long-term effects, no surgery, anything like that. I was just happy for Sengun and the Rockets, because we're seeing a guy who's really come into his own, really figured out his game. on a team that will be interesting to follow the next few years and kind of how they grow this thing out. And so I was just happy for his career and the growth of his career, that there's no pause in it. There's no hiatus to it. He can continue to improve, would have a full off season. We don't talk about this enough. Guys who miss full off seasons of growth and strength and development and all of those things. I didn't want that to be this, where he missed a whole off season to work on his game because he was recovering from an injury.
Yeah, agree. 100% right. Like the fact that, for instance, Bronny James, who we've talked about, missed a good portion of his summer before his freshman season. It put him behind the 8 ball, right? These guys that miss portions of their offseason, it's harder for them to improve, right? And look, I love Sengun's game. He's averaging 21 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists per game this year, right? There are growth areas here. He is a player that I always worry about these guys a little bit in terms of scaling to winning basketball. It's really difficult unless you're Nikola Jokic and you are a monster 3-level scorer who can put his shoulder into anybody, move them at any time, be the best passer in the NBA, be, this really sharp defensive player who uses his length incredibly well on the court. I know Rockets fans want to bring up the name Jokic with Sengun a lot, and I understand why. And I don't think that it's entirely without merit in a lot of cases, but there are real differences right now. And there is obviously substantial room for Sengun to grow, to reach even like Sabonis levels, in my opinion, let alone, Jokic levels.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful sometimes with someone like Jokic, where it's, everybody missed on him because he was drafted in the second round and now he's the best player in the NBA and you can do it without crazy athleticism. And yeah, but he has the best processing, I don't want to say we've ever seen. I'm sure there's other names there too, but one of the best processors we've ever seen play the game of basketball, along with his size and his strength and his contact balance. And they built a really good roster around him and all of these things. I think sometimes we get a little bit quick to, this guy can replicate this or that guy can replicate it because they have similar games. And I'm not saying Sengun can't get there. I would never, I'm not going to doubt him, but that's a long way to go to get from where Sengun is at, which is an amazing level. It's really good. It's really impressive. I love to see the growth, but there's a lot of little nuanced things to go from where he's at to then be the absolute focal point of the offense that's leading your team to championships and winning MVPs. And if it's not that level, Sam, then where does that put your team? If he's not the best player on your team, if he can't be your best player on a championship team, can that role and archetype be the second best player? And if it can, then what's the first player have to be? What's the number one option have to be? You know what I mean? So you have to start answering those questions at some point.
So before we do that, I want to talk about where he's gotten better this season, right? I think he has gotten generally better this season at just being even more physical and using his body and being able to just get to the rim and score, right? He is a guy that, can really take guys off the bounce. He's really comfortable playing high up the court and then finding these mismatches and being able to move guys, right? Also, he showcased some real post ability. I love the fact that he can pass on the move as well. That's a real factor for me that is almost more intriguing than Sabonis in a lot of ways, right? Sabonis, I think, has this unbelievable processing ability. He's an incredible passer from the post. I think he's an unbelievable dexterous dribble handoff player.
Yeah.
I feel like Sengun even brings a little bit more to the table in terms of okay, I'm dribbling, I'm driving, I'm making a live dribble play with one hand, or finding a creative behind the back look or something like that. Sabonis keeps it a little bit more simpler, which I think honestly is a little bit more effective right now. But in terms of seeing where this could go for Sengun, that's where I think it's really interesting when you're trying to project what the upside can be for him long term. We'll talk about the defense maybe next, but what have you thought about Sengun's offensive season to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's just speaking to the physicality, the most recent game I watched, I think it was against the Spurs. He was a really good screen setter, like setting really solid screens, very impactful, had multiple just in the first 8 minutes where the defenders get engulfed. And it was different defenders. So, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, you're engulfing Jordan Poole on screen after screen. Like this was multiple different defenders. So I looked it up and he's 11th in the NBA in screen assists. So I mean, it's not like he's the best, but the names we've already been talking about are the guys above him right now. I think that's really valuable. I would say most games I watch, I come away impressed or more impressed. Maybe it's my standards weren't high enough with how he scores out of pick and roll, right? Like you think about a guy like Alperen Sengun, it's like, okay, well, he's not a high riser. You can't throw lobs to him. How's he going to finish against drop coverage? Well, he does have a nice touch in the short roll floater, but he also finds crafty ways to finish all the way at the rim. So I think that's one of the biggest things I've come away impressed with. And it kind of answers my question I asked earlier. He doesn't have to be the primary initiator to be effective. I'm sure we'll look at like things we'd want to see improve. So I'll leave it there. I think it's kind of ball screen in general, setting the screens and then being able to finish plays off of that in the short roll and even all the way to the rim.
Yeah. And to me, all of this is kind of the difference between him and Jokic on some level, right? Like Jokic can like really just like get all the way to the basket.
Yeah.
Right. He can bury you. He is so strong. He's so wide. I don't feel like Sengun is quite as like wide, like through his body is Jokic is, and like quite as big and like has quite as high of a release point. But I feel like he is almost like it's like I don't want to say he's like more mobile, but like there's something to like his mobility that is really interesting in how he's able to operate in those short roll when he has the advantage situations or like taking mismatches off the dribble, right? Like there's just a lot of really interesting things that he can bring, but the downside of that is that he's just never been like a wildly efficient offensive player as a scorer, right? Like Jokic, even when he was younger, was like one of the most efficient players in the league. Alperen Sengun to this point, his true shooting percentage is, compared to league average, 3 points below league average, 3 points above league average. And then this year he's 1 point above league average, 1 percentage point above league average. Jokic, from the time he got in the league was 8 points above league average, 16% above league average, 8%, 5%, 7%, then the last 4 years, it's just like exploded 13, 17, 21% above league average last season, and then 12% above league average this year. So it's just like a totally different kind of scoring game. And I think that's almost where Sengun is going to have to really focus his energies is into being like even more physical. Like I thought the reason I say he's gotten more physical and has gotten better at this because I think he has gotten stronger and more capable of scoring around the basket. He needs to have counters to what he's doing, like even past the floater, which is just inherently like a tougher shot. Honestly, like I would like to see him develop a mid-range jumper at least that is real and can be utilized consistently. And then on top of it, I would like to see him really just like continue to get stronger and more physical and just like be able to bury guys on the block.
Well, I looked it up and I mean, this is Real GM, but like Jokic, according to Real GM, weighs 40 more pounds than Alperen Sengun. Like the Real GM has Sengun at 240 and has Jokic at 280. I've seen Nikola Jokic in person. I haven't been to a game where I've seen Sengun in person, but like just my vibe from watching on TV is like 40 pounds is significant, right? And yeah, just as I visualize it, it seems like Jokic would be that significant of a difference in size. And that matters when we're talking about these type of players, right? Like whenever you're not doing it with explosive twitch and maneuvering. And so if he can't get there physically in terms of that weight, that strength, that physicality, then you have to make up for it with, like you said, counter moves and finesse and nuance and angles, using both hands, having the threat of a mid-range jump shot, having even more of a threat of a three-point jump shot, which isn't a threat for Sengun yet. So those are the things he'll have to make up for not being 280 pounds and just being able to bury guys and get wherever he wants.
the passing and playmaking, I think, has been outstanding. Like, I think he just continues to be this unbelievably creative, intuitive passer. I think as he gets to play for like a better team than what the Rockets are a lot of the time, offensively particularly, the assist number is going to go. Like, he's going to be up around like 6-7 assists per game as opposed to 5. If you told me he had a season where it was like 7.5, 8 per game,
Sure.
not impossible to me. Like, the vision is just very clearly abundantly there. What have you thought of the defense? Because that to me, I actually thought he was pretty solid early in the year. I thought that there was a lot of growth that had taken place. And I think, like, undeniably, this is his best defensive season in his career to this point. I thought as the season went, he started to like maybe slow down a little bit on that end and wasn't quite as impactful. What were your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just limitations, right? Because of a lot of the things we're talking about. And so I think he has to be creative in the way he defends a ball screen. Like, you can't just drop and then jump up high enough to contest the lob or whatever. So he has to have really, really active hands. I think that's one thing with Sengun he's going to have to be really good at. And, especially if they're going to play him, I think sometimes you want to switch up how you're defending, keep the offense off balance a little bit, because he's not going to be elite in just one coverage. So maybe you drop, maybe play a little higher the next time. So in those situations, can you get a hand in the pocket passing window? Can you, all of a sudden blitz the ball handler real fast and surprise him with one? And so I think that's where he's going to have to win, is just in these nuanced ways, because he just doesn't have the length and the movement and all of that. And then just, again, how much can you use your physicality to make a guy finish? So yeah, he's going to get to a spot, the offensive player. Can you lean on him, get into his lower body, make him feel you when he goes into a shot? Because again, just playing with straight verticality contest, he doesn't have the same length of some of these other bigs we see around the league to contest those shots. So can you make him feel you in his lower body to maybe take his attention off the finishing? So he just has to win in those ways, but it's not like he's ever going to be a defensive anchor on that end of the floor.
Yeah, what I'll say is this. So with Sengun on the court, the Rockets give up 115.4 points per 100 possessions. With him off the court, they give up 109.4. Look, I think part of this is, the Jalen Green effect. Like, Jalen Green is still just really, really rough on the defensive end of the court. The number drops if you put Fred on the court, Fred VanVleet, with Alperen Sengun, to 113.5. Alperen without Fred VanVleet on the court, his numbers are 123.6 points per 100 possessions that they give up.
That's screen navigation, Sam. Ball screen navigation.
Yeah, VanVleet has been a godsend for them on defense this year. Like, truly, his ability to fight through screens. Rockets fans, if you know anything about them, like, pissed and moaned all year last year about their guards hanging Sengun out to dry. This year, that has not happened with Fred, at least. It hasn't happened with Dillon Brooks either. Dillon Brooks fights through screens as well and like really gets through them at a high level. If you have the minutes where Alperen Sengun and Fred VanVleet are on the court without Jalen Green, it's a small sample of only 335 minutes, but they have a 104.9 defensive rating in those moments. I think that if you have guys who can really fight over the top of screens and who are diligent and who are willing to like be there, I think Sengun can be okay on defense. And that's where this season has almost been more important for Sengun's development and for the Rockets moving forward as well. Finding out, hey, can this guy like be a piece of an average defense, right? I think the good news for the Rockets is that we've found out the answer to that is yes. They've been a really good defense throughout the course of the season. I don't think he's been the driver behind that necessarily. I think Fred has been. I think that certainly, Dillon Brooks's energy and effort and everything has been valuable in that way. Tari Eason's energy and effort. Amen Thompson has been fantastic on defense. The guy who goes like way under the radar there is Jabari Smith. I think Jabari Smith does such a good job positionally, stays rotations like across the back line are really, really solid and does a good job on the ball against a different, kind of group of players. I think Jabari has been just so steady on that end defensively this year. Like not like an all defense guy or anything, but like just really solid and steady this year. But if you surround Sengun with guys like this, I think that you're fine on defense with him on the court. The key is removing the guys that are going to struggle to navigate screens, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. And so you have to weigh these things. Is he so good or good enough offensively that it's like, okay, he's an offensive hub. He does all of these things. He's going to continue to get better. And so because of that, we're willing to concede that we can't go with the defensive anchor at the center position. We have to go with, we can't bring in some just bucket getting guard or wing who can't get over screens. Whenever Fred, moves on, retire, whatever, we have to find that point guard that does something similar. We have to value those traits defensively more than what some other guy may bring offensively. So if you build this thing out smartly and correctly, get a little bit creative defensively. And here's the nice thing, Sam, you just brought up 3-4 names that they can build this out, right? Like Jabari makes sense next to him. Amin makes sense next to him, cutting off of him, moving off of him. Jabari spaces the floor offensively. So especially if Sengun himself can space the floor, you can have a non-shooter. Even if Amin never shoots, it's okay. Because if Sengun can space the floor. So you don't like that?
Yes. Yeah. No, if he can shoot, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I used to say you can live with 2 non-shooters. I think you have to be really creative with that. Like, I think you can absolutely live with 1 non-shooter. And then, Tari Eason, so there's enough names here already where it's like, you can start to build this thing out.
KDC in the YouTube comments brings up there's a segment of the Rockets fan base who is too eager to supplant Fred VanVleet, either Jalen fans or super eager Amen fans. These fans severely underestimate what Fred gives to the team. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Fred VanVleet's been the Rockets' best player this season. Alperen's numbers, if you look at the production, everything looks better, but in terms of organizing the offense, in terms of organizing the defense, frankly, which has been so critical, Fred has been awesome. I know that Fred is limited in terms of scoring around the basket and being able to do certain things, but his leadership, his decision-making, like Fred right now is like a 4.5 to 1 or something assist to turnover ratio. Like it's completely ridiculous. This is a team last year that like desperately struggled with turnovers. And, right now they're in the top 10 in the NBA with turnover rate. Fred has been like such a big addition for them. I think he is the biggest reason that they have been like a competent, good team this year. And you saw what happened when Fred was off the court versus what you've seen, recently, like these last 2 games, like they've won. And look, they beat San Antonio and Washington, right? So like, let's not overreact necessarily, but like Fred has been the guy for them this year. And look, like long term, we'll see what that looks like. He's got 1 year, he's got 2 years left on the deal. The second year is a team option after this year. He could just be like a bridge guy to help these guys get better. He's obviously not necessarily in their age timeline, but even just his presence in that respect has been immense for them, I think.
I mean, good for them, right? Like they went out, they spent on Fred. And he's, like you said, he's been great for him. And it's allowed them to figure out what guys can and cannot do. And we talk all the time. At some point in every episode, it comes up. The worst thing a young rebuilding team, whatever, can do is go a whole season and not find out what their guys are capable of, what track they're on. It's not the end all be all, but the Houston, I feel like, can go through this season, whether they end up making the play in or not, and go, we have a better idea of what Alperen Sengun is or is not. We have a better idea of what Jalen Green is or is not. We have a better idea of what Jabari is or is not on down the line. And that is a ton of value to a team in the Rockets situation. And, shout out Fred for going in there and being a vet and a professional about it. Shout out the Rockets for making the move, giving him that contract to help continue to push this thing forward, or at least show the path that helps push it forward.
Yep, I agree. Okay. What the last point I want to bring up here is offensively, you kind of started to talk about this at the beginning, but I wanted to close with it. Defensively, we talked about how you have to build around Sengun. Offensively, the big question for me is what is Amen Thompson at this point? I've loved the Sengun Thompson like synergy. I feel like that they seem to have on the court together. I feel like you absolutely need like three, not just like good shooters, but like really, really like high end, like 40% 3-point shooters out there. If you're going to make those two work together. I mean, among the guys on the roster that like we think can get there, I mean, like Jabari Smith, I would think can get there. Cam Whitmore, I think has a shot to get there. Other than that,
it's got to be that's it, right?
I think so. Like, I don't really trust Jalen Green. Tari Eason, like I love him as a player, adore everything about him in the way he plays, but not a shooter, really, right? Dylan Brooks, you know, a guy who's going to take bad shots. Like, it's hard. It's going to be really, really hard, I think, to make the like Amen Sengun core work. They're almost going to have to do like more kind of moving around them, I feel like. Not that that's like a bad thing or anything. Like, they have so many assets and they're going to get another top 10 pick this year, obviously, with that Brooklyn pick. So Jabari, I love, like, as a guy that can play next to Sengun and hopefully continue to grow as a weak side rim protector and continue to grow in multiple facets. But I worry about kind of where the backcourt is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Tari is career 35% 3-point shooter and about the same on corner threes.
They're all open. Teams don't really guard Tari out there.
Yeah.
And again, I say that like as a person that truly loves Tari Eason's game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, I came into this year, like, as I think big picture NBA, like, can you make two non-shooters work? If they're super high processors, you know, one of them's a really good cutter, one of them plays with the ball in their hands a lot, like those type of things. And as I watch a team night in and night out try to do it, as I watch other teams around the league, and I'm just like, I'm wavering on feeling that can actually work, you know, and it's something I really want to watch in the playoffs. How many playoff teams are playing with two non-floor spacers at one time? My guess is we're not going to see it. You know, we're talking about the Thunder with one non-floor spacer and how detrimental that can be to them. So two non-floor spacers seems almost undo, you know, like I'm always like, if you're super creative, and it's like, can you be creative every single possession to make that work? So can it work in stretches? Maybe, but if that's really the core of your team, if those are two of your five core players, it's going to be tough. And, you know, I don't know if I believe Amen's going to get there. Sengun, you know, has had 3 years to develop. Maybe this is the offseason that it happens, but one of those guys has to. And, you know, if they don't, then it would be very interesting to see how they would try to make it work.
I really need the Rockets stand up with Reed Shepherd. Like, that's where I'm at on this. Like, Reed Shepherd would be unbelievable. Like, operating off of Sengun, operating off of Amen Thompson, like an Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore backcourt to me sounds like the most fun thing imaginable. Like, you go like Amen, Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith, Alperen Sengun is your starters long term, and then you have Tari Eason be like this hyper vigilant attacking like sixth man, and then you figure out like the rest of it kind of around it. That sounds like a team that would be like incredibly fun.
8th overall number pick, right? Or 8th pick overall right now for the Houston Rockets. So be interesting if Reed would last that long.
It'd be interesting to see if Reed would last that long. I think that is a fair point. Okay. Let's jump in to these off-season previews. We're going to do off-season previews for teams as they get eliminated from the NBA playoffs this season. The first one for us was the first team eliminated. It was the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs have a really interesting offseason. They have about $34 million in cap space this year, something along those lines that they can get to if they really want it. That would involve, you know, declining Devontae Graham's non-guaranteed deal, and, you know, they'd have to get rid of a couple of other guys that maybe they don't want to get rid of, right? But they have a chance to like really have some space if they want it this year to be able to make some moves. The way we're going to structure these things beyond that are we're going to look at the core pieces that we feel like they have under contract, the other players that are really interesting and could be valuable for them in some way or another, the free agents they have, and what their overall like asset structure is in the draft, what they could look at in the draft. And then finally, we're going to talk just about like what they need to accomplish this summer, right? What do they need to do in order to take that next step? The Spurs right now are not a very good team, but you can imagine very quickly how this turns when you have Victor Wembanyama around. It's actually going to be very plausible for them to get to the point where Victor allows them to like really shift things, in my opinion. They're 14-52 right now, but that could like easily turn to like right around 500 next year if they make the right moves this summer, I think.
Sam, do you know what they are post All-Star break in terms of offensive rating in the NBA?
I don't.
They are 12th in offensive rating post All-Star break. And I mean, I didn't dive super into these numbers, but I would think that them being third in team 3-point percentage has a lot to do with that. And so this plays right into what we've talked about. Post All-Star break, Trey Jones is shooting 50% from three. Devin Vassell, 46. Malachi Branham, 45. Keldon Johnson, 41. Victor's almost at 40. Julian Champagnie even is at 39. And so I'm not saying it has to be these guys, but to play into something we've talked about all year with this team in terms of Victor offensively, put floor spacing around him. He is gravity. He is going to be able to score, or he's going to be able to get guys shots. And it has proven to, now it hasn't equated to a bunch of wins. Okay. In fairness, they're still 3-8, but they're 20th in net rating post All-Star break, 23rd in defensive. So I think this shows if they're able to knock down shots, and I don't think we can expect them to be third next year for throughout the entire year, but they made shots from three. They spaced the floor. They're top 15 in offensive rating for a decent stretch of basketball here. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a small sample size proof that putting spacing around Victor is going to make your offense pretty decent.
I think that that's a really, really great point. And we've talked about that quite a bit now, that we think shooting around Victor is going to be so important for getting the most out of a team built around him. To me, they have three guys that like I really look at that could grow with Victor, right? Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and then like maybe Keldon Johnson, but I think Keldon probably profiles best as like a sixth man kind of guy right now, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
On a really, really good team, that is. Vassell is interesting. Vassell fits a lot of the archetypes that we're talking about. He's gotten a lot of on-ball opportunities and reps, maybe is a fair way to put it, right? Like this is a guy that often ends up, you know, kind of taking on large loads of their offensive structure because he's the guy that can create in the backcourt. And I think his season this year has been pretty solid, if I'm being honest. This is a guy that is averaging 19 points per game, 4 assists. I think that the passing over the last 2 years has really taken a nice little jump. The finishing this year from 2-point range, his ability to kind of get into even more advantageous spots, I think has really, really helped lift his overall efficiency. And despite playing for a bad offensive team, right now, Devin Vassell has a league average true shooting percentage, while not necessarily being a guy that I think of as like a number one perimeter option. I think this has been like a strong season for Devin Vassell, where I believe in his growth moving forward. Jeremy Sohan had the weird, you know, kind of point guard experiment, which probably was not the best for Jeremy Sohan's development, in my opinion. You know, some people, including the Spurs, probably disagree with that. But I have liked the fact that, you know, the passing did get a little bit better. I think he continues to be a very strong defender who has a chance to take a real jump into, you know, if not all defense, like right below that level. And the shooting took an enormous jump this year, right? Like he is gone from being like a guy early on last season that like couldn't make free throws to 78% from the foul line. And he's made 33% of his 3-pointers this year. Has a lot of room to grow, has a lot of stuff that he has to fix in his game. But those are the two guys that I really look at around Victor, and I see, okay, this can work long term as long as Sohan fixes the jumper.
Yeah, and I've liked what he's looked like playing back in the role that we've seen the last few months. I mean, whatever had to happen for whether it was him, whoever it was that thought they needed to see him as the point guard, I'm glad they got it out of their system, and now he can go into a role and start trying to play in this role where hopefully he can just knock down corner threes, offensive rebound, timely cuts, all of those things. And yeah, Devin Vassell, I love the elevation he gets on his jump shot. You can put the ball in his hands a little bit. So those are interesting pieces moving forward. I don't think anybody has to stay outside of Victor, but I would probably put those two in a level above the rest as well.
Yep. Next, I would look at it from the perspective of, let's go with the point guard role, right? Trey Jones is their point guard right now. Interesting player in a lot of respects. A player that is a bit limited in terms of scoring ability, but a great decision maker, can really, really help in a lot of respects. How do you feel about what you have seen from Trey Jones this season? And do you think he can be a starting point guard option for them, or do they need to go out and find another option?
I mean, I think if you can upgrade it, I would. I don't think he's anything special on either end, but I feel like he does make the right play. He's a calming presence for this team. The things you talked about, I wouldn't sell the farm for something. I don't think you just have to, but I would love to see them upgrade that position if they can. Now, if you go into the offseason and the draft doesn't fall the way you want, that doesn't make sense. There's not a trade. There's not a free agent that makes sense. I get it. I understand if they came back next year and he's still the starter, I wouldn't hate it, but I think they should actively be pursuing and looking to upgrade that spot. And then if he's coming off the bench for you, you're ecstatic, right? Trey Jones now as your backup point guard is an incredible. Trey Jones as your starting point guard is okay. I can live with it, but I would look to upgrade that this offseason if I could.
I agree with you. I think that upgrading the point guard position, even more than the shooting questions for them, is the biggest place to look. I would be trying to upgrade the shooting or upgrade the point guard role at a real level. Free agents, they have Devontae Graham, Chetty Osman, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Don Barlow, Charles Bassey and Julian Champagny are guys that they have non-guarantees on if they want to use those. The only guy among that group that I really like is Don Barlow. I really, really like what his upside looks like. They converted him recently. He'll be a restricted free agent again this summer. I mean, honestly, if I was another team, I'd probably try and go get Don Barlow. If I was the Spurs, I would probably try and lock him into a 3-year, deal that allows him to continue to grow and develop. Do you have any thoughts on where that kind of sits right now?
No, the one that I wonder about is Malachi Branham, just because I can't quite figure out what the long-term impact is. Can he be a potential off-ball scorer off the bench for them? I didn't like when they were trying to play him on the ball. I believed in the jumper a little bit more than maybe others and what the actual shooting percentage has been throughout his career. But again, he shot 45% post All-Star break. I was going to pull up what his percentage is for the season. So Branham is he's at 34% for the entire season. So again, he's a guy that if the shot really comes around, like what we've seen post All-Star break, I'm not saying he's a core piece at all. I'm just saying that maybe he's a guy that makes sense to keep around because he can space the floor, play off the bench, and you have him on that rookie scale contract for a few more years.
Yep. I don't know. I go back and forth on if Branham is a guy. I haven't seen a lot from Blake Wesley that makes me fully buy into it. Sure. I think Branham could be an interesting bench player. Is kind of where I'm at on things. I think that would be the expectation for me more than anything. Agreed. But not a guy that I really feel is a significant piece of if I was upgrading him, I would feel okay about it. He Absolutely. Wouldn't play into my decision making. this summer. Neither would Blake Wesley. Neither would CD Sissoko. Honestly, like you just kind of got to roll with what you can. The Spurs with Victor now, like, are in a real place where they can upgrade this thing quickly. And you want to make sure that Victor is happy and competing as early as he can. And they have enough space to do so. Like, they have cap space where they can go out and try and make a move. They have some interesting trade options as well that they could explore. Is there anybody on the trade market that you could look at as like an intriguing potential player here for the Spurs?
Well, I mean, the one we've talked about it. I had a conversation with someone the other day about, like, if Trae Young actually becomes, available, is that a move you make? And, I had a really good conversation with somebody. They kind of pushed back and said, I would want somebody better defensively. If Victor is this good defensively, do you want to put somebody as much of a liability as Trae Young? And, like, yeah, you could still be 15th because Vic is so good and the guys around him could be good enough, but why not wait for a guy who's better defensively where you can have a top 5 defense because you don't have this crazy liability? And I kind of understand that as well. So, yeah, like, I can't think of another one off the top of guys that have hit the market or kind of being discussed right now, but we know names are going to come up after early exits in the playoffs and some of those type of things as well.
So another name that is like a bit interesting to me with them, he doesn't really fit the archetype of what we've talked about of what we would want for the Spurs. I do wonder if Josh Giddey is like a little bit interesting for them. If Oklahoma City looks to just kind of, before they have to pay him because he's going to be extension eligible this summer, could they look to like try and move off of him before then and try and get into a different place? If you went the Giddey route, you would be setting up to be like an enormous roster, which is kind of intriguing to me on some level.
Would you move Sohan then? Or would you try to play him and Sohan together?
That's a good question. Honestly, like, it's a really, really fair point. I don't love this for what it's worth. To me, it's just, I'm trying to find point guards that could come available at the end of the day.
Like, it would be interesting for him if Sohan wasn't on the roster, right? Like, if you had 3 other floor spacers and then Giddey playing with Vic and all of that and the size and the defense and everything, because, in San Antonio now, Giddey can play with the ball in hand a whole lot more than what he gets to in OKC. I just don't think you can then have Sohan be a core piece of that as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, you'd have to almost make a call between them at that point. And I don't know that I would want to do that if I was the Spurs right now. You could just like try and do Giddey for like, a first round pick into the future or something, right? Like one of the Atlanta picks that you own or something along those lines. Right. But I don't know, like, it's an intriguing idea to me in terms of just like being big and like being able to take up like an immense amount of the court. I don't think it's the route I would go if I was them though. The other, like, to me, and this is where the draft kind of fits in with all of it as well, it'd be a better idea for the Spurs to take somebody like Nikola Topic or Reed Shepherd than to go get Josh Giddey. Also, though, like, it would be a better idea to me to go and get like a Trae Young if you could, because I love what he would bring offensively to them just in such a real way. And the shooting and the playmaking, he would make life so much easier on Victor at such a real level. And I think you could make the defense work with Victor behind Trae to where I would probably just do that. But if the option is like Giddey or like a lower level player, I think I would just go with like Topic or Reed Shepherd in the draft with potentially 2 picks, by the way. Like, we listed right now what they're projected at. They have the projected number 3 pick in the draft, and then they have an early pick in the second round and a middle round pick in the second round. They also could end up with Toronto's pick if Toronto ends up finishing outside of the top 6 on draft night. I believe that right now Toronto is literally 6th. So like lottery odds and like lottery gods would need to be in Toronto's favor to keep the pick.
No, I mean, and that's where then you can draft one of the guys you're talking about and get, one of these wings that, again, could space the floor, like, Jacoby Walter or, if Reese, if depending on where it falls, like you could get Reese as well. Like there's a combination of wing floor spacer plus guard that runs the team type of stuff. So, it will be interesting if they end up with both of those. You could hit on them. Yeah. So Toronto Tankathon has them 7th right now. And just doing some quick math, that would be 15 plus 16, 31, 32% being inside the top 6. And then whatever's left there, 68 being outside the top 6 with where they're at with the lottery numbers. So, a 2/3 chance maybe that, that they end up with 2 picks.
Yeah, no, I agree. Very real potential they end up with these 2 picks. We will see what happens there. Yeah, to me, the Spurs, they're free agents that they could try and chase. Like if I was them, I would really strongly just look into like the floor spacing free agency market, right? See who's going to be available. I wouldn't want to spend like long-term dollars on it. I think a big key for the Spurs moving forward is maintaining their flexibility and their roster flexibility long-term so that they can go get a star. But how would you feel about them going to get a star right now? Like in general, let's maybe not even say it's Trae Young. Do you think it would be early for them? Do you think it would be, right timing for them to go for it? How do you feel about them chasing somebody to like take a big leap next to Victor next season?
Yeah, I don't mind that, but I think that just speaks to where I think Victor is at already. And I don't want to waste any years of what Victor Wembanyama is. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, he's going to only have a 8-year career because of his size. But at the end of the day, like, he is 7'5", and they're like, I just don't want to waste any years. I want to go for it now. I assume Victor wants to win. He seems like a very competitive person. And so I'm not saying it has to be like a complete overhaul where we throw everything, trade all of our young guys, trade all of these picks and go for it. But if there is a move that makes sense, assets wise, money wise, all of that, I have no problem with them trying to fast track this thing just based solely on the fact that he is this good. We've seen it already. We saw the growth throughout this year, Sam. Like we saw him get better throughout this season. So I have no problem with the Spurs saying, like, let's go ahead, make a big move, pair him with Victor, make moves around the edges, and let's go try to, like, you're not going to compete next year in the playoffs, but let's go ahead and like as Basketball Genesis says, let's not waste time. Let's not waste a single year of this. He's a generational prospect for a reason. You don't play around with that. You don't waste years of that if at all possible.
Yeah, I agree. And with the 34 million in space, like to me, that's where you do the shooting stuff or the point guard stuff, right? The problem is there are not great point guards this year in the draft, but potentially there are or in the free agency class, there could be point guards in the draft. Shooting wise, there are some shooters. Like you could go out and like try and give Buddy Hield like a big balloon payment, for a year. And I think Buddy would actually be really valuable for them. Is a shooter if they ended up deciding getting, to 25, 27 million in practical cap space, right? There's just a lot that I think they could really do that could really help move this core forward a little bit. I would probably be around the star market. They have all of these Atlanta picks. They have all of their own picks that they could use in trades. Obviously, they have this other Toronto pick as well that could be valuable. If a star comes available that makes sense next to Victor, I would do it. If a star doesn't really come available, I think you just have to kind of be patient and build around the margins and, just try and be like a little bit more competitive next season. I would say the final place I want to talk is probably the draft. They have been connected a lot with guys like Nikola Topic, Reed Shepherd, players like that. I'm all for that. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense for the Spurs moving forward to go try and get like a long-term point guard that is on this age timeline for them. Like, to me, like it's both the trade market and in free agency though. I don't think I would just limit the Spurs to like the point guard position in the draft.
Sure.
I would look kind of across the map at the positional spectrum. Like Zach Riza-Shea makes a lot of sense for the Spurs.
I agree.
Like as a great floor spacer who's an awesome defensive prospect, questionable in terms of what he can do off the dribble, but really a great fit next to Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan, and would give you an immense amount of size next to those two. Alex Sarr, I don't know if Sarr makes a crazy amount of sense to me for them, because you could go the two towers next to Victor with Alex, but I don't know if I need that. If you believe in Steph Castle's shot, we talked about this last week. I think Steph could be a guy that can really hit a high end outcome at some point if you buy him as a shooter. Modest Buzelis, Ron Holland, Cody Williams. I just wouldn't limit it to the guard position. If I was looking at the Spurs in the draft, I would say that they could use help kind of across the positional spectrum. And I think they should probably just take the guy that they think is the best player available.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you brought up the Sarr, and I've brought it up before, just how much fun it would be to have him and Victor on the floor together. But at the end of the day, that's probably the one position you're not looking for, is a 5-man. So, any of the names you brought up, yeah, I think Risacher makes a lot of sense. I've come around on him a whole lot in terms of, one of the top guys on my board. And so I don't think you have to take Reed Shepherd or have to take Topic over him if they're not higher than him on your personal board. If you think Zachary Risacher is a better player and a better prospect than Topic or whoever, then take him. And I think it makes absolute sense. The only one, unless you just have Alex Sarr in a tier crazy above all of those guys, he's probably the one guy I would say hey, you probably don't need to take him. Go ahead and take one of these wings or these point guards or something like that.
Okay. I think that's all I've got on the Spurs. The last point here that I will say is I think they just need to get more athletic. Truly, they just feel a little bit slow on the perimeter. They feel like they don't have a ton of juice to get to the rim and draw foul shots and consistently break down defenders, having real team speed, having real athleticism. That is something that I think would be really, really valuable for the Spurs to acquire this summer in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there is something to be said in a league of, high level elite athletes, having some of those on your team. And as we go through the I don't know who you would pick out as multiple guys on their roster that are that. So I think that's, a good call there as well.
Okay. The next team that has been eliminated, the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards just need talent. This summer is just all about acquiring talent for me, for the Wizards, right? They just need more assets essentially to be able to go out and find real core pieces. Bilal Coulibaly and Deni Avdija to me are their two long-term core players that I think you can look at. And Deni's growth this year has really pushed them, in my opinion, into a space where I'm comfortable considering him a core piece, right? Something of a core piece, at least. We'll see what it looks like long-term, but I think Deni has been good enough to where it's fine to throw him in there. Bilal has been a really interesting rookie. I did not expect as much from him as he's given them this season, but he has given them quite a bit this year that has been good. They have other guys like Kyle Kuzma, who could be on that roster for a while or could not be on that roster for a while. It just depends on how they want to go about things, right? Corey Kispert, he's extension eligible this year. They need to make a decision on Corey Kispert this summer in all likelihood, so that they don't lose the asset in some way, shape, or form. They have all these younger kids like Johnny Davis, Vukcevic, Patrick Baldwin, guys that I think at this point we just don't really consider pieces that are important to their long-term growth necessarily. But they also have 3 draft picks. They have what is currently projected as the number 1 overall pick. They have a 14% chance to get it, but they are the worst team in the league right now. They acquired a first-round pick from the Clippers, basically. I think it's the Clippers pick right now, but it's a weird
Oh,
kind of deal where it's
best
like
of,
kind of
worst
slithers
of thing.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they have number 50 in this class as well. They don't have their early second round pick this year. So they're going to be able to bring in two guys that like could really help be a piece of their core long term. This is just kind of simple to me. They have like $22 million in cap space. I think they're probably going to be pretty bad next year. I think that they just need to really focus on continuing to fill out their young talent and finding guys who can be a piece of the core, because unlike the Spurs with, you know, Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell, and like frankly even like Sohan to me is on the level of like Koulibaly and Avdia as a prospect long term. It's easier for them to figure out a pathway because they have the guy. They have Victor. The Wizards don't have the guy yet. Like Bilal, maybe like if you squint, you can see a world where he can be that. I don't. I think he's probably going to be more of like a 3-and-D wing more than anything. Denny is, you know, a good starting quality player, but probably not a, you know, super high end potential star. They need to find like not just the number one option, but the number two option, and potentially even the number three option on their team moving forward. And that's a hard place to be, especially when the 2024 draft does not feature as much star upside as what, you know, hopefully Wizards fans would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's hard. If they don't get Alex Sarr, you know, whether that's they get the number one pick and get to choose him, or let's say they fall to 3 and, you know, I don't think it's a lock at all that Alex Sarr is the number one pick. Like, I don't think that's a thing at all. You know, is there a world where Alex Sarr could fall to number 3? Sure. But if he doesn't, then where do you go? Do you take a stabilizing player, you know, right? Like, do you take Reed Shepherd just to come in like, hey, at least this guy's going to space the floor? But, you know, is that where you go? Is it Matas, you know, take a swing on him? Is it Ron Holland? You know, I think that's who I took for them in our mock a month or so ago, just because I said, like, you know what, I'm just going to swing for the fences on this one. And maybe this guy can be a number 2 option or something like that. Here's what I will say. They better figure out like a vet point guard situation, because Tyus Jones is a free agent, unrestricted free agent this summer. I don't think you can go into next season with all of these wings. Like, I like Koulibaly. I like Denny Avdia. I like Corey Kispert, like not as a starter, but as like a wing off the bench. I think he's good. Kuzma, like they've been playing essentially like all of these guys in the starting lineup together. But you got to have a point guard, no matter who you end up taking, whether it's Matas, whether it's Ron Holland, you know, Alex Sarr, whoever it is. They better have a plan to bring in somebody that can orchestrate the offense. We just spent how long talking about how valuable Fred VanVleet, and I'm not saying that, you know, you want to spend that type of money, but you better have a point guard that can run the show. Even if you took a Reed Shepherd or a Nikola Topic, like you can't rely on a rookie point guard to come in and run things for this team. So I hope they find some way to replace that, because they need some veteran ball handling to kind of keep all of this young talent organized.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if I was them, I'm probably just trying to sign Tyus Jones. Again,
I agree.
Just given what the free agency class of point guards looks like, I think that you really, truly just kind of have to go with Tyus. And, you know, if you're Tyus Jones, you're probably okay with getting like real money to be the Wizards point guard. Like, could you do a 3-year, $50 million deal for Tyus Jones where the final year is a team option? Like something like that. Basically have him around for 2 years where it's like real money, right? That makes sense to me in some way. I will also say this is definitely a team that I'm looking at with Josh Giddey.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because Will Dawkins, their general manager, was in the Oklahoma City front office, was, you know, a huge part of their scouting and development team when Josh Giddey was drafted by Oklahoma City. And if Oklahoma City decides to move on Giddey, I wonder if the Wizards, a team that needs, you know, a point guard of the future, needs somebody that can come in and, you know, organize things, can be like a super high level orchestrator of the offense. I do think Giddey is a really interesting name for them to take. This would honestly kind of be the team I look at for this.
I mean, that would be fat. Like they would just start essentially a bunch of guys that, the same, like you'd start Giddy. I mean, I don't think Koulibaly at the 2, but like maybe they do Koulibaly, Avia, Kuzma, and then you draft Alex Sarr, and I guess you kind of figure it out and go from there. So, yeah, that would be interesting, but they got to figure out that spot. No matter who they draft, no matter how the things go, like you can't put the ball in any of these other guys' hands and say orchestrate things. You got to have somebody to do it.
And again, the Wizards have this late first round pick this year.
Yeah.
Like that's not crazy off in terms of the value for Giddey, in my opinion, given that you're going to have to pay Giddey like moving forward here and extend him. That number 26 pick and like maybe something small, like beyond that. That's an interesting one. Also, like, I don't know what they're going to do with Corey Kispert. I would probably want to keep Corey Kispert if I was them. Where are you at on Corey Kispert as an extension candidate? And do you think that this is the team that should be paying Corey Kispert to stick around?
I don't think they have to be, just because of all of these guys we've talked about with Denny and Koulibaly specifically. So I wouldn't go crazy with the number that I would pay him. I like Kispert. I think he's an interesting scorer overall. A lot of times I come away from games a little bit impressed that he's not just a 3-point shooter, that he can put the ball on the deck a little bit. He'll operate a ball screen, put a defender in jail, and hit a 12-foot floater, so I think he can do those, but all of that interests me more off the bench, Sam, not as a starting, bucket getter, but bucket getter's too far, but not as a guy that's in the starting lineup getting points, but as a guy coming off the bench. This year he's averaging 12.5 points on 48, 37, 76 from the free throw line. So I'm interested in Kispert. I would love to bring Kispert back if I was the Wizards, but I wouldn't pay him starter level money, not whenever I already have Koulibaly on his rookie deal, Denny on this new extension that's had a really good year. I wouldn't give him that type of money. But something, Dirty Dancer says 13 million. So, the non-tax MLE, something a little more in that range is something I would be more comfortable with.
Yeah. Kispert to me is probably like a $15 million a year guy, just in terms of like young floor spacers who hit 38 to 42% from 3, like especially when you can do a little bit more off the bounce than that and you're an efficient decision maker. Those guys do tend to get paid in a real way. I look, if they could do 4 years, 60 million on Kispert, I'd probably do that, if I'm being honest. Like, I think that that's a reasonable number for them to pay. And I don't think he then loses trade value if you do that.
Okay, so that's it. Like, then they'd have quite a few guys in that range where if the time came to make a deal, you have some guys, Denny would be in that similar range. He's actually on a contract that's decreasing. You put Kispert on that contract, and you just have some guys in that range where you can put that money together to go make a trade if that came about over the next year, 2-3 years.
Yeah, and look, like if they want to get super flexible in terms of the money on their books, they can do that in a hurry, right? Like the Kyle Kuzma deal, you can easily move that for draft picks and like an expiring $20 million deal. Very, very easily in the summer if you want to. Marvin Bagley expires after this year. Rashawn Holmes' deal expires after this year. Landry Shamet, they have a non-guarantee on for this year and then a team option the next year. So like, even if they want to keep Shamet, like, his deal is not guaranteed the following year. So really the only like money on this team that is big and an issue is Jordan Poole. They're going to be able to like get flexible in a hurry if they really want to, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so, like I said, Kispert's shooting like 66% on 2s this year, and it's not crazy volume, right? Only 3.5 a game. But again, I think
he picks his spots well.
Yes, he's a little bit more than just a floor spacer. He can attack a closeout. He can operate a ball screen here and there. So whatever the going rate for a solid scorer off the bench that spaces the floor, that's what I would pay him as. If he wanted more, like if he and his camp think he's a starting level, wing, then that makes it a little bit tougher of a decision if that's how he wants to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is just a team that needs talent.
Yeah.
That's not really another way to phrase it. Like if I was them, I would be looking kind of at the 2020 and 2021 NBA drafts, guys that will be restricted free agents this summer, Patrick Williams, Isaac Okoro, guys in that vein that are, really, really interesting, good players in some respect or another. And then the 2021 draft, like the pre-agency guys, right? With honestly, like Jalen Green. I probably wouldn't want to do Jalen Green if I was them, but Jalen Green is a name that, like, the Rockets may have to make a decision on this year. Moses Moody with the Warriors, like, could the Warriors decide to make a move early on him in order to get somebody to help their aging core now, kind of thing? Just basically trying to look at what's available. Like, I don't think Trey Murphy will come available. I don't think Jalen Johnson will come available. I think there are names that could come available though. And I would be targeting those kind of players if I was Washington right now, in addition to using whatever pick capital I can and getting to the point where, I hopefully have some upside pieces that can be number 1, number 2, and number 3 options on a real playoff caliber NBA team.
They also have to figure out some sort of center. Like they have to find somebody to play that position. Like I know Marvin Bagley went there and kind of tore things up early on. And, but like, he's not a starting NBA 5-man. And so I'm not saying you have to like go spend a bunch of money, but if you don't land Alex Sarr or somebody like that in the draft, maybe you get somebody at 26 and you start a rookie there. I think there'll be some intriguing ones at 26 actually, but veteran point guard, obviously more important. Overall, like just talent, yes, but you got to have some sort of center, maybe some rim protection there at some point, whether it's a veteran signing or you get somebody with one of those picks in the draft.
Yeah, and that's a good way to transition into the like Wizards draft ideas here, right? Like we both, I think, would probably have Alex Sarr at number 1 for them, right?
I would 100%. Yep.
Like he just makes a lot of sense for this organization. They need like a long-term defensive anchor and somebody that like has real upside, I think, offensively long-term. I don't love like taking a center, especially one that I think is like a bit questionable offensively at number 1, but I do think that there is at least value in taking him in a year where there just isn't a lot of upside around the board, really.
Yeah, I mean, like you can take Ricochet, and again, like it's not like you can't move any of these guys, but the thing with the wing position is where are the minutes coming from? And again, I realize like, okay, let's just trade Kuzma. That's a very tradable contract, or don't, move on from Kispert or something like that. Even Cody Williams, like, yes, like he makes sense, but it seems like you have I realize you can move on from guys. I would rather just like, hey, Alex Sarr. Now, if you told me they end up with Cody Williams, that's fine, or Ricochet or whatever. I just kind of look at their roster. I like some of these guys in Koulibaly, Advia, like we've talked about. Sarr makes sense to me. Like that's the one that makes sense. Like this is a team where I think he really, really makes sense.
Yeah, and the other piece of it that is interesting on their front as well is, Will Dawkins, we mentioned as a connection with Giddey. Will Dawkins was a piece of the front office that, to connect it to the first segment on the show, drafted Jalen Williams, right? So Cody Williams is in this class. I wonder if there's like something of a connection there with that family in general. Modest Buzelis, Nikola Topic, Reed Shepherd, like they just need everything across the board right now. There isn't a position they couldn't use. This is full scale, best player available to me. Whoever you evaluate as the best player and has the highest upside, I think you just take a swing on it.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. The last point here is Jordan Poole. Look, I would not want Jordan Poole on my roster if I was a team at this point. I mean, like, would you be willing to attach any of these picks to get off of Jordan Poole's 3 years and $95 million left on his deal?
I mean, maybe if I didn't, I don't know. It's going to take a lot to get out. Like nobody's going to want that. And there's so much length on it. I feel like in general, we see these ones that have multiple years. We see teams just having to keep those guys around, and then you move them later on. I think I would just bring him back on the roster next year and figure it out from there. I don't know that I would want to give up one of these first round picks to do it.
I agree.
What I mean, because what are you
going
to do? What are you going to do with the cap space, right? Like, unless you have some. I mean, he's toxic. Dustin says he's toxic, in my opinion. Like, yeah, if he's absolutely crushing your locker room and the culture and everything, like, I don't have enough of a pulse on the Wizards locker room to know that and speak that in fact. So I'm not going to say that. If you told me that was true, then I could buy into it a little bit more. So, yeah, like I understand the arguments for it. I would just sit on that contract for at least one more year. I would make both of these selections.
I agree with you. I would sit on this contract and continue to have him on the roster. And like, if you have to send him home, like, you send him home, I guess. But I don't think we're at that point yet necessarily either. I think that this is a team that just needs talent. You take the best players that you can. You try to find marginal inefficiencies in the trade market where you can. Take guys that you evaluate to be interesting, high upside swings, and go from there.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, last thing that we want to talk about today. Championship week during the draft. Anything exciting that you have seen during championship week thus far, Bryce?
Well, I wanted to start with Collin Murray-Boyles, and then that did not go great for South Carolina earlier today, but Collin Murray-Boyles, he had an insane game against Arkansas where he showed off his finishing package, both hands, just his touch and kind of finesse and nuance around the rim. I also thought that he showed real hand activity defensively. I didn't catch the game today. I know he didn't finish well, but he did have 4 blocks in a game that Auburn just kind of ran them out of the gym. So that was the first guy on the list of names I had brought up was Collin Murray-Boyles.
So I absolutely have been super interested in Collin Murray-Boyles for a while now. We've talked about him on the podcast previously.
Yeah.
Absolutely a guy that to me looks like a real first round pick this year if he comes through and decides to go pro. What I will say is that last night he did an interview with The State, which is a newspaper down in South Carolina. And he told The State that he was planning on going back to South Carolina next year and was going to be back in Columbia. They followed up with his dad. These are obviously heat of the moment things, right? Where you never know how much you can trust a player coming right off the court saying one thing, right? They asked the dad, and the dad said the plan is a 2-year plan. And I'll be honest with you, I was kind of sad when I heard that, because I was yeah, this is a potential first round pick in this draft that we are really disappointed in, and we would love to see another interesting player. But when Murray-Boyles explained the reason to the newspaper, and the dad explained the reason to the newspaper, it made me like him more as a prospect. Honestly, he was just yeah, the goal is not to get drafted high, it's to stick in the NBA. Basically, the goal is to be able to enter the NBA and hit the ground running. And, we still think that we have some growth there for that. And that's kind of amazing to me. That makes me like Collin Murray-Boyles even more.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good self-awareness. I know when I first started watching him, I was like, man, this is really intriguing. I think he is a little bit of an acquired taste. I don't mean this negatively, but the more you watch him, the more you see the nuanced things and the way he contributes to a game. You can't just watch one game, I don't think, and fall in love with Collin Murray-Boyles. You watch another game, you're like, oh my gosh, he sets incredible screens. Oh, this finishing really does translate, even though it's a little bit old schooly. He can finish with both hands. Oh, the defensive communication and those type of things. Everybody's going to say the same thing. He's not a center. Obviously, he's a forward, and he hasn't shot the ball. He doesn't space the floor. So everything around his scout and questions is going to come down to whether or not he can space the floor. And Dustin, I just want to give you a shout out real quick in the comments. Yeah, I see that you said you kind of phrased it wrong. I see what you're talking about over there. So I understand where you're coming from with that comment on Jordan Poole. So all good, my guy. But yeah, great self-awareness. You don't blame someone. If they feel like his camp feels like, hey, we need a year of development with this, come back to South Carolina next year, space the floor, work on those little nuance things. I get it. I will say I have him in my first round right now. Like he is in my top 30 right now if I release my big board. And yeah, he's a really good player, really intriguing. And whether it's this year or next, I think he's going to be drafted. He's going to be a first round pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like even just like doing things like getting his body like 100% right? Like
sure, yeah.
He has like some baby fat like to be able to take off. Like he's still 18 years old too, like entering the NBA at 18 years old or like whenever he turns 19 this year. That's hard. Like that's really hard, right? Just being that young in that league is difficult. So I was a fan. Like when I heard it, I was a fan of him saying it. I was a fan of kind of everything that I heard from Collin Murray-Boyles. And I'm just a fan of his game. Like I am just really, I really buy the defense. I think he is outstanding on that end. Like it's not just like he is a solid defensive player who can do a few things. He is a great help defender. He can slide his feet well for his size. I think he'll even get quicker as he, continues to tone up his body and get into better shape. I think he is a fantastic player. And, we'll see what, I tend not to like take these things as gospel when guys say this coming off the court. This one, obviously, with then like the follow up with his dad, like saying like, hey, this was like a 2-year plan, like everything like this. It does make me feel a little bit more like this is probably not going to be this year, but there's time, obviously, like he could declare and see what happens and we'll go from there. Right.
The other thing is he did miss the start of his season. So we talk about like guys not getting like he had a sickness at the beginning of his season and missed the beginning. And so I think we're seeing him come into his own and really get comfortable as a young player, a freshman in the SEC. So that's a part of it as well that I wanted to mention as we talk about guys not getting that full ramp up development, whatever period into their seasons.
Yep. I think that's right. By the way, I don't know if you're watching the Pitt, North Carolina game, but like we're in the middle of just like a Bub Carrington show of all shows.
So I record in my little son's bedroom. So like I'm completely isolated from the world. Whenever I'm in here, there's no TVs, nothing. That's the only window right there. And it's even blacked out behind that. So he doesn't wake up in the mornings. Bub was on my list because I thought he was really good in the Wake Forest game. They had him guarding Hunter Salas. And there's some possessions where I was like, okay, yeah, he gets a little bit like off ball awareness, some of those things. But when he was locked in on Salas and his length and he moved and he was engaged, it was pretty impressive. I walked away from that. I moved him up my board in the middle of that game, Sam, because I'm like, I kind of just buy it. Like I just watch this kid play. I think he does a lot of the little things. I like just kind of the demeanor he plays with. It was kind of a gut thing. And I know, as a scout, whatever, like maybe we're not supposed to do those things. He's just one of those guys. I'm just like, I kind of buy it. And I know the jumper has some work to do. And I like it better off the dribble than off the catch. But yeah, I thought that was impressive. Obviously, I'm not watching this, but it sounds like he's putting another good performance together.
21 points, 8 for 12 from the field right now.
That's a good performance.
Yeah, fantastic against like a top 5 defense in North Carolina. Has been great. Oh, by the way, Kentucky decided to do the thing where they don't start Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd. They went down 7 immediately. Within the first half, like Reed had like 10 points on 4 from the field and like a couple assists and everything. They're both at like 14 right now, halfway through the second quarter. Justin Edwards has 0. DJ Wagner has 8. Like it's a tough show right now with the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah. I mean, it's we all know how it's going to play out every game. So like I think just turn it on 4 or 5 minutes late. They're going to be down and then we'll watch Reed and Rob come in and do their thing.
Yeah. The other guy like I was really impressed with is Devin Carter.
Yes.
I think Devin Carter was great yesterday. Like they go in, they upset Creighton and everything. Just the leadership, like continuing to show that leadership is fantastic. This is a team with Providence that, lost Bryce Hopkins midway through the year and could have kind of slid out of the picture. But shout out to Kim English. He did a great job kind of holding that group together. Really good defensive group. And then, Devin Carter has been, I think rightfully won the Big East Player of the Year award this year, even though they, I think they were like the 8th best team in the league from the time Hopkins got hurt onward. He's been outstanding, just like keeping the ship steady. This team hasn't suffered a bad loss all year. They've beaten Creighton twice. They've beaten Marquette back when they had Bryce Hopkins. I hope they make the tournament. Like, I would like to see Devin Carter in the tournament.
Yeah, no, he's been awesome. Like you say, the win over Creighton, I think they're playing Marquette as we speak. So he's definitely a guy, and I see his name brought up more and more. He's a name that, like, in situations where it's available, I feel like people ask about him more than almost any prospect, that's not at the top. Like, I get a lot of Devin Carter questions, which I find fascinating. So, the shooting is what's interesting to me, right? The free throw percentage is, like, I think low 70s for his career. The 3-point percentage this year is great on high volume, but wasn't the 2 years prior. It looks a little bit funny, but man, he's made some big shots. Like you said, the leadership, I think he'll be even better defensively when he doesn't have this crazy offensive load. Solidly a first-round pick for me, and very intrigued, and I think can continue to grow his stock. If they would happen to, beat Marquette tonight without Tyler Kolek, get into the tournament, and, if he can show some things there.
Yeah. And look, like, it's kind of a weird moonball shot kind of deal too,
Yep.
right? Like, that's what makes it tricky. Anybody else that's, like, really stood out to you?
I had some names, but I was going to say the Baylor. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to mention the Connecticut guys. I thought Klingon and Castle both yesterday were excellent.
Yeah.
Just outstanding game from both of those two. I thought that, Klingon really showcased the passing and playmaking that. Have you and I talked about that? Like, I think Klingon's a really underrated passer.
I saw your tweet, so I definitely was encouraged to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I think Donovan can really, really pass the ball. And then Castle was just kind of all over the place, like, really just did a lot in that first game against Xavier, filled gaps and just, like, really, really helped them kind of across the board. And then today, looks like they were the two worst players for Connecticut
looks like
starters.
Looks like the guards dominated that game. I haven't watched, but just looking at the box score.
Yeah, I haven't watched either, but Cam Spencer goes for 20 points and 9 assists with 0 turnovers, just like an absolute icon. I'm in on the Cam Spencer as an NBA player train, by the way, and have been since August. So I will be happy to watch this game later.
The Baylor guys continue to be interesting for me. They play Iowa State tonight, which is a really good defense. And then if they win, I don't know if the Houston game has happened yet or not, but essentially they could go Iowa State, Houston, back-to-back games, back-to-back days. And so it's like, okay, how does Jacoby Walter look against defensive of this caliber? How does Misi look against defenses of this caliber when they're playing multiple games in multiple days? So I just still trying to get a grasp for how good I think Jacoby Walter is. Same thing with Misi, like, obviously first round guys, lottery potential with both of them, maybe Walter for sure. Misi's around there. Just, still trying to hash out what's the range. I have a good feel for who they are as players, but what's the range? Even Jalen Bridges, is a guy that has shot the ball well this year at times and is an interesting prospect. So I think the Baylor guys as well, over these next two, assuming they get a win tonight.
Yeah, I really respect Bridges, and Gregory Castillo brings up Jalen Bridges and Nick Clifford, who's a kind of wing at Colorado State.
Yeah,
older guys like this, I really would like them to be able to dribble.
Sure.
Like, I don't think either of those two can put the ball on the ground at all, and with how quickly things come at you in the NBA, it gets hard if you can't put the ball on the ground at all. I'm intrigued by both of them in some respects. Like, I think both of them do a really good job on defense, and both, Nick Clifford can shoot. Like, I feel pretty good about that. Bridges, I'm a little bit more questionable because it's just like open corner threes for the most part. But like, interesting, like top 100 guys, I would venture.
Yeah, no, I definitely have them in my top 100. Another one, I know he lost, and we talked about him last time. Quentin Post, the big man at BC. I thought he looked really good against Virginia, spaced the floor. I know he's older. I get it. I understand it. I could see a team that just is like, hey, we need a backup big that spaces the floor. I don't know if that's a second round pick. I don't know if that's an undrafted free agent. I don't know if that's a two-way guy. Maybe that's all it ends up being. I think he's on a roster next year, and I thought he looked really good in that game against Virginia, even though they lost.
I'm fascinated to see what happens with Quentin Post because he's old for a prospect. Like he's like old. Like I think he's like 24, turns 25 like next year potentially. Don't quote me on that. I think those numbers are right.
He's 23. Sure. He has a March birthday, so it depends if his birthday is hit. He turns 24 in 6 days.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, interesting player though. Like really can move and shoot like in a real way. Defends at a decent clip. Good player though. Bryce, I think that's all I've got today though. Do you have anything else you want to talk about here before we go?
Nope, that'll be good.
That's it. Okay. Well, hopefully the Buckeyes can pull out a win here late in this game against Illinois. That'd be good. But that's all I've got as well. You and I will be back on Selection Sunday, like after the tournament and everything. We'll do a dive into games we're excited about, into draft stuff, into everything that we can kind of dive into, right? We'll absolutely,
be some fun matchups they'll come out right away with lots of NBA draft focus or not. I think, there's always just these matchups that jump out to you, or potential matchups as you play out the bracket that are awesome.
No question. I'm really pumped about it. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, so at Motor City Hoops on Twitter for Pistons, but more and more general NBA, obviously plenty of NBA draft coverage, dropping scouts. So follow me on there, and then you can find it and locate it on Substack. Just raw notes. I don't write articles. I don't do that. I don't like to write, but you can just kind of peek behind the curtain with just some scout notes on these prospects. And the Pistons Pulse, if you want to listen to a Pistons specific podcast, and get some Pistons content. And then obviously here with Sam on Game Theory. So appreciate you guys.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. I will have a mock draft next week. I have actually filed it, so I promise you that you will have it. Keep it locked here. That's all I've got beyond that. We will be back on Sunday. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.